Okay. Okay. Okay, so yes, here we are. We are live. Okay, good evening and good morning, everyone. For those who are watching us from New York, this is Nicole Garbellini from Aurora Theatre. And today we are chatting with James McLindon, playwright of Choices, as part of COVID and Cigarettes. James is a member of the Nylon Fusion Theatre Company in New York, and he has written numerous plays that have been produced across the country as well as around the world, such as England, Ireland, Scotland, India, the Philippines, Australia, Dubai, Luxembourg, Estonia, and of course, Hong Kong. So, James, welcome.
Thank you.
So, James, first of all, okay, so you are a playwright, of course, but you also have a law background. So, can you tell us, so you graduated at Harvard with summa cum laude, and you were also involved as an editor at the Harvard Review publication. So can you tell us how you went from your law background into playwriting?
Yeah, I can try, I guess. I started writing in college and with a writing partner and really enjoyed it. And at that point, I thought I was going to go on for an academic career in history and had even been accepted into some programs. But my writing partner and I decided we were having so much fun writing comedy, which is, we wrote sketch comedy at the time, that we threw all our plans over and moved to Chicago and did that for a few years and really enjoyed it. But at some point I decided I don't know, at that point I didn't feel like I had that much I wanted to say, or I could write comedy, but I wanted to do more than that. And I didn't feel like I had the technical ability to do it. And I was always interested in law. And so one way or the other, I ended up going to law school. And I practiced law in Boston for quite a while, but never really got away from theater. I saw a lot of theater, and I always thought that I'd like to write again, and eventually came back to it. So at this point, I spent a lot of my time writing, and have enjoyed it very much. I think there's a, in both, I was a litigator. I was somebody who tried cases, and I still practice part-time. And there's a lot of similarities between playwriting and litigating. And when you're trying a case, you're basically telling people a story. You have an audience of 12 jurors, and you are limited to certain facts that are just facts that you can't get away from. And out of that, you tell your client's side of the story. And, there are protagonists and antagonists, and there are twists and turns, and it's not all that different. The biggest difference, of course, when you're writing fiction is that you can write whatever you want. And if something is inconvenient, and all lawyers deal with facts that they wish didn't exist, but that they have to deal with, in playwriting, you can just change that fact and make the character, the person you want them to be for the purpose that you have in writing. So, I found both of them very complementary. It's a kind of a left brain, right brain thing. And I've always felt that doing one helps me with the other.
And what kind of law do you specialize in?
Civil litigation of all sorts, a fair amount of property law, real estate law, but litigation, yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm a huge fan myself of courtroom dramas, actually.
Yes.
We had history of having produced a lot of content like courtroom drama, from The Crucible to Inherit the Wind and so forth. So I can see what you mean when you say that drama and courtroom drama are heavily correlated. So yes, Okay. Um, Thank you. Let's talk about choices, which has been produced like all around the country, America, and in different places, other places, I believe. What inspired you to write it?
Well, Choices is a play about a lot of things, but for me, what it's mainly about is the burden that one generation leaves to the next. It's a play about someone who is crushed by their student loans and is offered a way out. And without spoiling the play for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a rather diabolical solution. Uh, to me, I have a son in college, and I am aware of, in the United States, the amount of money that people have to borrow sometimes to go to school, and how that money impacts the rest of their life. Whether they can ever afford a house. It's a debt that they're constantly under. It's not dischargeable in bankruptcy, so it's always there. You never get away from it, and it's something that I think we need to do better as a nation addressing. At the same time, it's only one thing I think that is leaving a more difficult world for our children. Global warming is another matter. The politics in the United States right now are the worst that they've been in my entire life. There are all of these things, and you get to a point in life where you start thinking, what is the sum total of the world we're leaving our kids, and what do we do to make it better? And so that play, for me, is really a contemplation of all that. Also, it's a comedy, obviously. It's a very
Well,
dark comedy.
without spoiling the surprise, the way that we presented it, it was like very comedic. I almost saw elements of commedia dell'arte in it. It was like really physical, very quite different actually. Like when I first read it, I imagined this like as part of a Black Mirror episode almost. It's very Black Mirror-esque. Then when I watched it and I saw what the team did with it, I was like really surprised because it was really funny, very punchy, very physical. I did not expect that. So that was like a very, very interesting take on it. What about the other takes that you've seen in the past? Were they very different?
Yeah, it's funny. This play has had a life that precedes the coronavirus, but only by a little bit. So the first time I saw it produced was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it was a full stage production in a big theater, and it was wonderful. Fully staged, and remember theater when it was in theater.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was terrific. And then suddenly we're in a world like you and I are in today of two boxes, which have to do all the work. And what I found with that was, for me, it kind of watching this play go through a number of iterations with a number of different theaters, putting it on Zoom. I've kind of been able to track the way that the theater community has learned to use the new environment of Zoom to make theater. There are things you can do. Right when it first started, what a lot of people were doing was trying to recreate a space in which, say, two characters are existing. And they would have the common background and things like that. But they would also turn and try to look at each other. And sometimes they'd pass things back and forth. And you still see a little of that. But more and more people are doing it the way, kind of like we're doing now. We're face full frontal to the camera. What that does, I realize, is you're kind of seeing theater in close-up in a way you can't do in a conventional theater. And the ability for actors to use their faces more subtly and in different ways, because the audience member is in effect a few feet away rather than 50 feet away, 100 feet away, is really, really interesting to me. And actors have, I think, adjusted very beautifully to it, and I just enjoy watching that. It helps. This is a play with a lot of comedy, but it can be, if you're on a stage, the comedy, I think the bigger the house and the farther away the audience is, the broader the comedy gets, just to convey it. When you're in tight, you can do more subtle things. And so I've really enjoyed watching actors take this piece and use it in that direction. Some people have also done some things with kind of more Black Mirror-y stuff, I guess maybe is the way to put it, getting very, very close to the camera and getting at odd angles and the like, and just experimenting with the form and leaving realism behind and getting very weird, I guess is the best way to put it, but in a very good way, where the oddness of the angles and the disjointedness of some of the dialogue reflects, I think, the issues in the play and the way society is kind of broken. So it's had a relatively long life with a lot of productions, and everyone is different and unique, and so far they've all been great.
Excellent. Great. And yes, like you kind of already mentioned that, but how was it to work with the COVID and Cigarettes team on choices? You worked with Gail Gagnon, who is French. You worked with Kim Barrios-Lin, who is American in New York. And you worked with Yu Kitamura, who is Japanese, a Hong Kong resident, but a New York student. So how was it? How did it work out for you?
That's the great thing about COVID right now. And there is one great thing about COVID. And that is that, these people from all over the world can come together and make a piece of theater without ever leaving their living room. That's remarkable. And, I never would have had this opportunity before in a couple of ways. Maybe a Hong Kong theater would have taken my script, but they would have cast it locally, and done it with folks in Hong Kong. But the thing about COVID is that New York is as close to a theater in Hong Kong as next door is, because everyone's on Zoom. And so that's a lot of fun. The second thing as a playwright is, especially with smaller pieces like Choices, normally I wouldn't have attended rehearsals. Normally I probably wouldn't have had any contact with it, except I would have, if the director wanted to, I would have been happy to talk about it. But that's it. I wouldn't have been involved in casting, and I wouldn't have been involved in rehearsal, and I wouldn't have seen the production. That's just the way it goes. With Zoom, I get to be part of all of that. I got to be, Gail and I cast it together, and we got some wonderful people in, and Kim and Yu were just terrific choices that we made. And I didn't go to every rehearsal, but I went to a couple, and was able to answer some questions about it. And I think we did some tweaks on the script and the like. And just being part of it for me is one of the terrible things about COVID, of course, is for theater people is, we all just miss being in the room. We all just miss being in the theater and making it happen with other people and the like. And it's not as great as being live, but one thing Zoom gives me is an opportunity, as in this production, to be part of something that I wouldn't have been part of otherwise. And I appreciate that.
Yes, well, we appreciate having people like you from all over the world, especially like we're bridging New York with Hong Kong, which is fantastic for us, because yes, we do miss the room. We do miss being in the room with one another, but we also get to be very local when we do a production, because it's us, it's our community, and it's the people who see us. But this is a big expansion without leaving the room. So it's I guess it's not ideal, but it's got its perks. And yeah, so
it's got its perks.
Exactly. So how did you feel after watching the final cut, when it was all out and ready to go and everything? How did you feel when you watched it?
Oh, it was wonderful. Again, just the opportunity to see a Hong Kong production of one of my pieces is, never would have happened before. So that alone was great. But they did such a wonderful job with it. As I say, every production, every iteration is different in its own way. And Yu and Kim just brought different things to it. It's funny. I've seen this piece enough now that I don't laugh at any of it anymore because I've heard, all the jokes have been worn out in my mind. When I laugh during a piece, it's because the actor does something I haven't seen before and something that's just funny. And I was laughing out loud watching it. And that's unusual for a piece this old that I've seen this many times, but they both have tremendous comic instincts. And at the same time, they carry the weight of the piece. They bring the drama as well. And so just watching it was a pleasure.
Excellent. We're very pleased. You're doing very well view-wise. I think Choice is one of the top 3. So good.
Oh,
Let's keep going. Hopefully, like this set of interviews will give a boost to our videos. Will encourage our viewers to connect and watch more. I actually talked to people in the community and asked, have you watched COVID and Cigarettes yet? What do you think? And people say, yeah, I watched a few. It's good, but I want to take my time. Which is fair enough, which is what happens when you give like a long period of time to people to watch shows. So, okay. All right. So let's talk about COVID-19. How did it affect you? In what ways were you affected by it? As an artist, as a...
You're right. To this day, my wife and I aren't sure if we had it or not. We were never symptomatic, we don't think. But when it struck, our son was in Barcelona on a year abroad. It was one of the epicenters. The night that the president announced that no Americans would be allowed to return after 2 days, which turned out not to be accurate, but is what he said. We were in a panic calling, various travel, or going online with various travel websites, trying to get our son home and figuring all that out. We had spent the previous weekend in New York doing everything that we would learn a week later you shouldn't do. We went to a Broadway show. We were in crowded bars. We went walking on the High Line, which is this renovated elevated rail line that is now a pedestrian walkway. Just crowded with people in ways, you almost can't imagine now. It seems so long ago. And New York at that time, the virus was just exploding. Our son came home. We picked him up. We had to drive to Newark because that was the only place we could get him into the country. There was no screening at the airport. He came through. We picked him up. We, drove home in a confined car with him. And found out the following week that his roommate in Barcelona had COVID. He'd been very sick, and he'd been told he didn't have it by a doctor in Spain, but he did, as well as another good friend of my son. So my son was, sharing a very small room with somebody who had COVID. And fortunately, he was fine. Fortunately, his friend was fine, but my son was no doubt exposed to it, and who knows if we were. So that's how we started. It was about as bad as it could get, and we're very fortunate to have dodged all that. We then went into the lockdown like everyone else, and we're going back into it again. As I'm sure the virus in the U.S. is pretty much out of control, and I think we're heading toward another shutdown.
Right. Okay. That must have been when that happened. That must have been April, maybe March, April.
It was mid-March, yeah.
March, right. Yes, we were in full swing here. Well, that's like basically very close to where it started. But Hong Kong, because we experienced SARS back in the early 2000s, so the country is extremely ready to prevent this kind of health crisis. Therefore, the moment the news started coming out, we had to wear masks, we had to avoid crowded places, we had to keep the distance. And of course, like, there were people who said, like, no, I don't want to wear a mask, I don't think it's that bad yet. But things changed pretty quickly and went downhill pretty quickly. Luckily, though, here it was more contained. And I think in the US, it didn't quite get there. And also Europe, it's still pretty bad. Italy, England, they're all in France, I believe. They're all in a semi-partial lockdown at the moment. So it's not really looking good. And who knows when things will get better. Did you have plans, let's say, personal or artistically, like shows or productions that got cancelled because of COVID?
Yes, a few got canceled, many got postponed, many moved to Zoom. For example, the Boston Theater Marathon, which did a production of Choices, was originally canceled. And then about a week later, they said, you know what, we're going to do it on Zoom. We're going to do one play a day. And they do 50 plays usually in a single day in a single theater in Boston. But they strung it out over 50 days, and it was great. That was the first sign to me that theater was, kind of fighting back against this thing and figuring out a new way to go. But yeah, I've had a number of both short pieces and full-length plays that have been mostly postponed. Some of them have been done as Zoom or streaming productions of various sorts. The full-length ones, keep getting bumped a few months down the road. I think that's probably the right thing. I'd like to see it live. I like to see it in person. But every few months I get a text or an email from somebody saying, yeah, we still can't open up, so we're looking at 4 months from now. And yeah, that's the way it goes. But that's happened with every playwright I know. It's just been a series of cancellations and postponements, and theaters are doing what they can, but they've got to keep people safe first.
Do you have any space that is open? For example, in Hong Kong, the theaters are open at the moment. One can go, but it can only be 50% full. And with the current situation, Hong Kong is a very expensive place, especially as far as property is concerned. And the theaters most likely will charge you full price, only to have 50% capacity. So no one is putting anything on because it's already a loss from the beginning. So is that
Right.
the case in New York?
There's nothing open.
Okay.
By law, nothing can open. In Massachusetts, there were a couple of theaters in the Berkshires and in the mountains that did productions this summer outdoors under tents. And as far as I know, those may be the only equity productions perhaps in the country, certainly in the Northeast United States, since the virus hit. And it's not, I think Broadway has announced it's closed through, I want to say, May or June of 2021.
Wow.
I mean, everything's shut down. Yeah, and it's so hard on artists. If your sole income is from theater right now, it's almost impossible to make ends meet.
Yeah, it's tragic. Yes. Well, once COVID is over, which it will be, this too shall pass, what is the first thing that you will do?
I don't know. That's a great question. I got to say I haven't thought about it. It probably because it hasn't felt like we were close enough to that happening to really think about. I'd love to go back to something with people. I'd love to go to theater. I'd love to go to a baseball game. I'd just love to, be in a crowd again. At the same time, I think it's going to be a while before people feel comfortable with that. And so I say I want to do it, and I do. But if we all got vaccines tomorrow and there was a theater event the next day, would I go? I don't know.
I hear you. Yes, I hear you. I do want to travel. I miss traveling. We haven't been anywhere outside Hong Kong in like the whole year, almost a year now. But yes, maybe we can travel again without coming back and having to quarantine. But do I want to?
Mhm.
One doesn't really want to risk it. So we'll have to see. Besides which, being at home forces you to do something else. So you explore different situations.
I'm with
Okay.
you, Nicole.
Yes.
I miss traveling a lot. I mean, I almost miss airport food, but there's an internet site where you can, they're shot from inside planes and they're landings and takeoffs from airports. And I found myself like I stumbled on it. I was in one of my social media feeds, and I just was like mesmerized by this plane landing in, I don't know, like JFK, and I realized just how much I kind of miss that travel and the excitement of travel and the like, that I was reduced to watching these videos of planes landing.
Yes, I get it. Okay, so now I'm moving it back to you. So tell us, like you wrote, you publish a lot of work. You wrote a lot of plays. Among all the work that you've done, which one is your personally favorite one? Which one are you the most proud?
Hmm. I think in some ways I feel like it's always the one I just wrote, or the most recent one. I'm I'm very happy with a play called When We Get Good Again, which premiered in January just before everything hit in Memphis, and did very well. And it was really, I felt like by the time that play got produced, I really had the script in great shape, and I got a great production out of it. I was very happy with that one. My first play, called Distant Music, we just had about 10 productions. I love that play. That's a play I'd like to go back to and visit. Theater to me is kind of like the musical Brigadoon is kind of a metaphor for theater, because in plays you create these little worlds and they don't exist except every 100 years, or every year, every few years, when it gets a production, and suddenly that world comes back to life. And it's a little different than it was the last time you saw it, because you have a different cast and the like. But suddenly that world exists and you can go visit it. And I would like to go back and visit Distant Music in that world. It takes place in an Irish pub in Cambridge on a snowy winter night. It's very atmospheric, and I like that one very much too.
Is there a particular playwright that you like, or a particular playwright that inspires you?
Yeah, there's any number. Martin McDonough for his humor,
Oh, quite
his
dark.
dark humor. August Wilson, anything by him. Tom Stoppard,
Mhm.
I think is just brilliant. Um, Dominique Morisseau is a rising American playwright. I think she's just terrific. I don't know. I probably I have more than I can name or read, I think, at this point.
Do you have a favorite play, or
Hmm.
more than one?
Angels in America is hard to beat.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, that would to be alone on a desert island with. That's probably the one.
Right. Okay. Hmm. And what do you plan? What are your plans in terms of future plays coming up, future writings and stuff? Anything going on?
Yeah, I have my full lengths. I've got some productions. I had one, it just got canceled because of COVID, or postponed. It'll be in the spring of Distant Music. It's about 1,000 miles from where I live, so I probably won't get to see it. But that's coming up. When We Get Good Again, the play I just mentioned that premiered in January is going to have another production in New York. It was supposed to be this fall. That's been postponed, and so we're waiting to get an idea of when that will be. And just lots and lots of my 10-minute plays are going to get done. Coming up, I've got some Christmas plays. They're really dark, but I've got a couple, 3 of those that are going to be coming up for production shortly, and I'm looking forward to those. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I actually look forward to hearing about your updates, and any upcoming news, please share with us, because after reading choices, watching it and everything, I'm very much curious for more. I'm in for more. So for those who are watching us, please make sure that you watch COVID and Cigarettes, and make sure to catch Choices by James McLindon. So James, thank you so much for joining us today, and all the best with all your upcoming and future projects. And I wish you a very nice day. While here it's almost time to bed. So thank you.
Nicole, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure, and stay safe, everyone.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, great. So we've done the recording. So hang on.